Chapter 121, Big and Small Bags. Wang Qing sat there calmly as he turned to the kitchen and said with a faint smile, "It's not easy for them to come to our house as guests. Take today as a chance to relax. Don't go to the kitchen. The two of them are not children. They can handle it." Wang Qing's words immediately revealed whose side he was on. Wang Yun's uncle was afraid of angering his cousin, who was a government official, so he glared at his wife. When Wang Yun's aunt saw that her man was angry, she didn't dare to cause trouble anymore. She obediently returned to the sofa and sat down. After Yu Bing finished chatting with Wang Wei, she planned to go to the kitchen to help. When she heard Wang Yun's words, she couldn't help but marvel that everyone's family had weird relatives. Seeing that her aunt was waiting obediently, Wang Yun pulled Yu Bing into the kitchen. "I've let you suffer." Yu Bing quickly shook her head and said with a smile, "Before I could react, you and Uncle Wang already finished defending me." Wang Yun secretly took out a piece of gelatin cake from the kitchen cabinet and handed it to Yu Bing. "Eat it to fill your stomach first. My aunt is like that. Just ignore her." This gelatin cake was a nutritious food for women. Because Wang Yun had injured her body when giving birth, Wang Qing had specifically gotten someone to buy it in the provincial capital. Yu Bing pursed her lips and chuckled. She would automatically ignore whatever these unimportant people said and wouldn't be hurt, but the Wang family's protection of her warmed her heart. Yu Bing planned to return to the village after lunch. She carried the things given by the Wang family and the Song family, then boarded the bus back to the commune. In order to earn some money, the old man driving the ox cart in the village took advantage of the fact that everyone was visiting their relatives and friends frequently during the new year to drive everyone. When Yu Bing got off the bus and rushed over, there were already a few villagers, Yu Yan, and a few intellectuals in the car. Everyone greeted Yu Bing when they saw her. In everyone's eyes, Yu Bing wasn't only the captain of the intellectual team, but also the person in charge of the village's industrial chain. She was someone with independent personnel immunity. As long as one wanted to enter the industrial chain, one would be polite to Yu Bing. Yu Yan was extremely jealous. If she had grown up in her biological parents' house, everything Yu Bing had today would be hers. Because there were many things, the space was filled after Yu Bing got on the ox cart. Seeing this, Yu Yan snorted. "If you take 2 seats alone, no one else will have a place to sit." Yu Bing didn't want to argue with her during the new year. She only said calmly, "I'm the only one getting in the carriage now. If there's anyone else, I can carry everything." They had been waiting for more than an hour. When the old man saw that there were only 2 empty seats left, he originally planned to leave. Unexpectedly, Yu Bing happened to catch up. The old man was happy that he had earned another person's travel fee. When he heard this, he immediately said kindly, "It's fine. If you hadn't come, I would have driven the carriage back." Since the old man had no objections, Yu Yan couldn't say anything else. She could only pout and glare at Yu Bing. When the villagers saw Yu Bing carrying a large pile of things, they thought that they had been sent from her house. Because the postman was also on holiday for the new year, but there was someone on duty at the post office, everyone needed to go to the post office to pick the packages up. A woman smiled and tried to befriend her. "Miss Yu, your family is really good to you. They were afraid that you wouldn't be able to eat well in the village, so they sent so many things over." Yu Bing didn't want to expose her relationship with the Song family and the Wang family. She sincerely treated them as friends, so she only smiled and didn't deny it. Instead, she changed the topic. However, this became a tacit agreement in Yu Yan's eyes. She couldn't help but think of the letter again. In the letter, her biological parents didn't seem to want to acknowledge her, but blood ties couldn't be broken just like that. She didn't believe that they didn't miss her. Yu Yan observed Yu Bing's things from the corner of her eye. The more she looked, the more she felt that these things were for 2 people. If they were just for Yu Bing alone, why would they give her so much? Half of it must have been given to her by her biological parents. Along the way, Yu Yan imagined her biological parents reading the letter Yu Bing had sent home. They wanted to acknowledge her, but because she had already been given to someone else, they could only suppress their heartache and write that letter. As she thought about it, Yu Yan looked at Yu Bing with red eyes. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 122, The Drama of the Year. Su Ling, who was beside her, sensed Yu Yan's emotions and felt puzzled. Why did she feel that Yu Yan seemed so similar to that crazy granny in her courtyard? If it weren't for the fact that the ox cart fees couldn't be refunded, Su Ling really wanted to jump out of the carriage and walk back herself to avoid Yu Yan. The police had said that if that crazy old lady killed someone one day, she wouldn't have any legal responsibility. Yu Bing also noticed Yu Yan's expression, but she couldn't be bothered with her. She had no idea that Yu Yan's imagination was running wild. After arriving at the village, Yu Yan was in no hurry to leave. She only stood quietly by the ox cart and waited for Yu Bing to give her her share. Yu Bing didn't know about Yu Yan's delusional thoughts, nor did she expect that Yu Yan was waiting for her. She only focused on bringing the things home. Seeing that Yu Bing didn't want to give her anything and was planning to go back directly, Yu Yan widened her eyes. She knew it. Yu Bing would definitely hide what her biological parents had given her. This bitch. However, on second thought, Yu Yan guessed that her biological parents didn't tell Yu Bing directly. They probably thought that Yu Bing would take the initiative to give her the things, but they didn't know that their relationship had long become strained and that she wouldn't deliver the things to her at all. Yu Yan returned to the dormitory angrily. At night, she even tossed and turned without being able to fall asleep. In the end, she made up her mind to retrieve her things. On the second day of the spring festival, after Yu Yan woke up, she ran to Yu Bing's house and hid behind a big tree in the distance. She planned to sneak in after Yu Bing and Jiang Chun left. The wind was a little strong today. Yu Yan waited for more than an hour before they carried their things out. She realized that the two of them were going to Xiaoxing's house, which was next door. Yu Yan couldn't help but curse Yu Bing for being a vixen. She even wanted to seduce Xiaoxing. However, at this moment, the most important thing for Yu Yan was to get her bag, so she didn't care that much. After confirming that Yu Bing and Jiang Chun had entered the Xiao family's house, she immediately ran to the wall at the side of the Yu family's house. After coming to the countryside, Yu Bing started exercising and paying attention to her nutrition but was still only 1.6 meters tall. Yu Yan had never lacked clothes or food since she was young. Coupled with her biological parents' genes, her tall figure of 1.7 meters had made many people envious. Her height also gave her an advantage when climbing the wall. The 2-meter-tall wall couldn't stop Yu Yan at all. She only extended her arm and easily climbed over the rotten tree roots in the corner. After landing safely, Yu Yan pushed open the closed door. There were many candies and cookies in the bamboo basket on the table in the hall. There were also a few souffles that Yu Yan had seen in the county's black market. Because it was expensive, Yu Yan had only bought one piece at that time. She didn't expect Yu Bing have so many pieces here. This must have been bought with the money Dad and Mom gave. If that's the case, I should have a share. With that, Yu Yan sat down and started eating without hesitation. She even poured herself a bowl of water. After she finished the two, she found a piece of greaseproof paper in the hall. She bagged the cookies and candy, then stuffed them into her cotton shirt. The reason Yu Yan only took cookies and sweets and not souffle was that cookies and sweets were easy to buy for everyone. However, if she took the souffle back to the dormitory, it would be equivalent to telling Yu Bing that she had come to her house to steal. After taking the food, Yu Yan entered the room again. She planned to look for some money and stamps, but after searching around, she didn't find anything except a few clothes. However, the sauerkraut jar beside the desk was especially eye-catching. Why hadn't the sauerkraut jar been left in the kitchen? Yu Yan, who was puzzled, opened the lid and realized that there were only a few pickled vegetables inside. She refused to give up and searched a few more times, but she found nothing. In the end, she could only return the jar to its original position. Yu Yan couldn't find any money. She could only go to the kitchen to take some food. However, as soon as she entered the kitchen, she heard voices coming from the courtyard door. It was Yu Bing and a little boy's voice. If she was caught by Yu Bing would definitely send her to the police station without hesitation. How could Yu Yan have the time to care about taking things? Seeing a small stool under the roof, she quickly picked up the stool and jumped out. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 123, Raising a Dog. Outside the door, Yu Bing smiled and took the bamboo basket of flowers from Shaolin. Thanks Xiaoli for us. We'll definitely put it on our bedstand and look at it every day. Yu Bing and Jiang Chun took the flowers Xiaoli made. Shaolin's mission was completed, so he skipped away. Yu Yan, who had sprained her ankle when she jumped down, was leaning against the wall and breathing, listening to the sounds in the courtyard. She heard Shaolin say goodbye and the sound of the courtyard door opening. I remember I closed the door when we left just now, Jiang Chun said in a puzzled voice. Yu Yan, who had a guilty conscience, ignored the pain in her ankle and limped towards the village. Realizing something was wrong, the two of them immediately ran into the house. The table had been swept clean, and there were only 2 soufflés left. How could they not understand? There had been a thief. Jiang Chun ran towards the house where the money was hidden, while Yu Bing quickly ran to the courtyard. When she found a stool in the corner, she quickly chased after her. Yu Yan had injured her leg, so how could she run that fast? Not long after, Yu Bing saw Yu Yan's back. After knowing who it was, Yu Bing smiled. Her things were not so easy to take. Yu Bing turned around and went home. Jiang Chun was at home checking the inventory to see if anything was missing. Seeing Yu Bing return, Jiang Chun quickly went forward and asked, "Did you see who it was?" Yu Bing had no intention of telling Jiang Chun. She only asked, "Are you missing anything?" Jiang Chun shook his head and said in a low voice, "The pickled vegetable jar was touched. Fortunately, the other party didn't discover the money I had hidden underground. I was scared to death." Then, she complained with heartache, "There's nothing else missing, but the food in the living room is gone." Yu Bing entered the house and realized that there were no signs of tampering at the place she had hidden the money. After confirming that there was only less food, she was relieved. "Looks like our wall is still a little too short. Let's get a dog to guard the door." In this day and age, there were very few people who raised dogs. After all, there was barely any food for people, so they couldn't care less about animals. However, Yu Bing and Jiang Chun were different from before. Moreover, with the identity of the tractor driver as a cover, since Yu Bing received a salary and work points, in the eyes of outsiders, she had the ability to raise a dog. Yu Bing decided to raise a puppy. Raising a puppy from when it was young would make the puppy more loyal. Unfortunately, the families in the village who raised dogs didn't have puppies, so she let Jiang Chun look after the house while she went to Xiaoxing's house. When Xiaoxing saw Yu Bing walk into the house, he went forward. "What's wrong?" Yu Bing explained what had happened just now, but she didn't mention that the thief was Yu Yan. When Xiaoxing heard this, he frowned and said, "I'll help you look for it, but I might not be able to find it in the next 2 days. Why don't I help you build a higher wall first?" Yu Bing smiled and said, "No need. Just find it and help me send it over. Tell me how much it costs." When Xiaoxing saw Yu Bing's strange attitude, he asked in confusion, "You're so calm. Do you know who entered your house?" Seeing that Xiaoxing had guessed it, Yu Bing didn't hide it. She nodded. She won't be able to cause any trouble. After this, she will probably have to lie low for a long time. Seeing that Yu Bingxin knew what she was doing, Xiaoxing was no longer worried. Yu Bing didn't call the police. Firstly, there was insufficient evidence. Secondly, even if the police determined that Yu Yan was a thief, they would only detain her for a few days. Thirdly, Yu Yan would immediately pay the price for her theft. Twisting her ankle was just the appetizer. Moreover, Yu Bing didn't want to finish Yu Yan off so quickly. After all, the game had just begun. Soon, it was the 3rd day of the Spring Festival. Yu Bing had already visited the people she wanted to visit a few days ago and brought them the New Year gift. On the 3rd day, she planned to visit everyone in the dormitory building. After all, she was also the captain of the intellectual team. It wasn't good for her not to show her face during the New Year. At the dormitory building of the intellectual team, there was a large living room on the 1st floor of the dormitory building. It was usually a place for everyone to relax and enjoy themselves. At this moment, most of the young people were chatting and warming up around the large basin in the middle. "Captain Yu!" Someone with sharp eyes immediately shouted after seeing Yu Bing enter the room. Yu Bing smiled and nodded. She raised her voice and said, "Happy New Year. I brought some pastries for everyone. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much." Chapter 124, Peanut Allergy. Everyone also saw Yu Bing at this moment and stood up to greet her. Yu Bing placed the pastries in her hand on the table in the hall and said with a smile, "This is the first New Year I spent with everyone in the Yi Mountain Brigade. Usually, because I don't live in the dormitory, although I know everyone, I'm not very familiar with them. I wanted to come over and chat with everyone during the New Year." Yu Bing came over this time firstly because she didn't know all the intellectuals very well. In order to effectively carry out the follow-up work, it was necessary to know more about everyone's situation. After all, the information registration she had asked the 2 team leaders to do previously only had simple information. She would only know more after familiarizing herself with everyone. Secondly, it was because the policy of supporting construction in the countryside had been around for many years. Some people had resigned themselves to fate and stayed in the countryside to get married and have children, but most people still had a strong desire to return to the city. This was also an important reason everyone hadn't been able to integrate with the villagers. After the year was over, when the factory was established, the advantages of the intellectuals would slowly be revealed. In terms of farming, the villagers were teachers, but in terms of management of the factory, the intellectuals had more say. The educational foundation they had would make them more accepting of new knowledge. The network behind them would also have a positive effect on the development of the factory. Yu Bing didn't want to see the younger generation of intellectuals show an even stronger sense of superiority after gaining power. Otherwise, it would only intensify the conflict between the 2 sides and sooner or later, something big would happen. When Yan Yin saw everything Yu Bing was enjoying, she felt even more indignant. And those pastries weighed several kilograms. The tractor driver's salary really made Yu Bing's life good. Yan Yin stared blankly at the pastries on the table, thinking about how to get Yu Bing. Yu Bing supervised the intellectuals now, and she was in charge of a huge industrial chain. When they opened the factory next year, she would be the factory director. Yan Yin originally only wanted to control Yu Bing, but not only did he fail that time, but he also fell seriously ill. People who did bad things tended to feel diffident. Yan Yin was indeed manipulative, but the most daring thing he had done was to try to rape Yu Bing. In the end, he didn't get anything out of it and even harmed himself. Yan Yin was still a little afraid. After that, he also went to ask Li Ping, but Li Ping insisted that she had seen Yu Bing drink the tea and even suspected that there was something wrong with his drug. She complained to him, making him confused. Previously, he didn't plan to marry Yu Bing, but after Wu Jin came to power, no one dared to slack off or bribe people to work for them. If this continued, Yan Yin felt that he really wouldn't be able to hold on anymore. Moreover, as Yu Bing held more positions, her value also increased. Now, marrying her seemed to be a good choice. As for thinking of a way to scheme against Yu Bing, Yan Yin didn't consider it for the time being. This time, he planned to use some above-board methods. Yu Bing stayed in the dormitory for a long time before leaving. In the afternoon, Yu Bing was reading alone in the room. When she heard the familiar voice, she calmly read the last 2 lines before looking at the door. Yu Yin covered her face with a scarf, revealing only her angry-looking eyes as she limped into the living room. Seeing Yu Yan's appearance, Yu Bing knew that the peanut butter she had put in had worked. When making pastries today, Yu Bing specifically brushed on a layer of peanut butter. That's right, she did it on purpose. There was a price to pay for daring to take her things. Yu Yan could forget about taking advantage of her in this lifetime. Yu Bing had learned about Yu Yan's peanut allergy in her previous life. At that time, Yu Yan went to the Yu family's house as a guest and accidentally ate bread stained with peanut butter. Not long after, an allergic reaction appeared. Only then did everyone know that she was allergic to peanuts. Yu Yan had eaten peanuts once when she was young. Since she had an allergic reaction, she had never eaten any peanut products again. However, she was still too young at that time and didn't have any memories of it. Her adoptive parents were worried that she would accidentally eat it, so they specifically told her when she grew up. It was because she didn't remember the taste of peanuts that she didn't realize there was peanut butter in the pastries today. She even felt that the pastries were sweet and ate quite a few. Yu Bing looked at Yu Yan in confusion and asked, "You are?" Yu Yan snorted. "Stop playing dumb. How can you not know that I'm Yu Yan?" Yu Bing looked at Yu Yan in surprise. "Yu Yan? I really didn't recognize you. What happened to you?" Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 125, Calling the Police Over a Needle. Yu Yan replied angrily, "You should know best. You're really vicious." Yu Bing was confused by Yu Yan's answer. She was vicious? Could it be that she forced Yu Yan to eat them? Yu Yan had always been good at distorting the truth, so Yu Bing was already used to it. "I don't know what you're talking about." Seeing Yu Yan's current appearance, Yu Bing was relieved, so she couldn't be bothered to talk to her anymore. She continued to read the book in her hand calmly. Yu Yan snatched the book and threw it on the ground. Then, she said indignantly, "You must know that I'm allergic to peanuts, right?" Yu Yan thought that her biological parents definitely knew that she was allergic to peanuts. It had to be said that Yu Yan's thoughts were as outlandish as ever. She even thought that Yu Bing didn't give her those packages because she expected her to go to her house to get them and specifically place the peanut products in the dessert. All of this was to set her up and make her sick. As for why Yu Bing set her up, Yu Yan had yet to think of a reason, but she still blamed Yu Bing. Yu Bing naturally wouldn't let Yu Yan lead her by the nose. After hearing the question, she said in confusion, "Firstly, I didn't know that you were allergic to peanuts. Secondly, if you're allergic to peanuts, go to the doctor. What's the point of looking for me?" Yu Yan slammed the table and glared at Yu Bing. "You caused this to happen to me. The only things I ate were your pastries today. There must be peanuts in them." Yu Bing stood up and glanced at Yu Yan. "I gave those pastries to the intellectuals. If others can eat it, how would I know that you can't? I'm actually impressed that you still have the guts to come to my house. Why? Do you think I don't know that you came to my house to steal things last night?" When Yu Yan heard the word steal, she came back to her senses. "What rumor are you trying to start again?" Yu Bing rolled her eyes. "What did I start a rumor about? I didn't say anything. I was just wondering if I should go to the commune to report the case so that we can be on guard against theft in the future." Yu Yan jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Do you have to do this? I only took a little bit of your food. How stingy." Yu Bing smiled meaningfully. Since you say I'm stingy, give me 10 yuan. Then, I'll take it that I sold those pastries to you. This is highway robbery. Those things cost 2 to 3 yuan at most. Moreover, those belong to me. It's only right that I take them. Yu Yan's gaze was fierce. Yu Bing wasn't anxious. She sat down indifferently, then said, I kept the stool you stepped on yesterday. Your footprints are clearly visible. As long as the police come and rule out those with an alibi at the time, matching the footprints with the remaining people will be enough to find the culprit. With that, Yu Bing stuck her head out and glanced at Yu Yan's shoes. You were wearing these shoes when you stole things yesterday, right? They're so new. No wonder the footprints on my stool are clearly visible. And as for those pastries, your roommate should know how many you bought and how many are left. Do you think she'll choose to protect you or uphold justice? Yu Yan panicked when she heard this. She was the only girl in the dormitory who had new shoes. It would already be good enough if Su Ling didn't hit her when she was down. How could Su Ling cover up her? No, she couldn't have a criminal record. Damn that bitch. She asked her for 10 yuan for something worth 2 to 3 yuan as if she had never seen money before. Since it was just 10 yuan, so be it. Yu Yan had no choice but to take out 10 yuan from her pocket and throw it on the table. Wait, pick up the book. Yu Bing sat down slowly and looked at Yu Yan indifferently. Yu Yan was so angry that she panted heavily. Thinking about how the evidence was still in Yu Bing's hands, she could only obediently bend down and pick up the book on the table. Then, she turned around angrily and left. Wasn't Yu Bing afraid that she would be a threat to her if she was recognized and returned to the Yu family? That was probably why Yu Bing had always disliked her and schemed against her. Yu Bing wanted her to give up on the idea of reuniting with the Yu family. The more Yu Bing was afraid, the more she would try to think of a way to go home. City H. During the new year, Feng Kai visited many elders and also revealed that there would be a food factory in the Yi Mountain Brigade. However, he didn't say anything else. After all, he hadn't been back for 2 years. People might get turned off if he was too straightforward. Therefore, Feng Kai chatted with his elders about light-hearted topics. On the second day of the new year, Feng Kai went to his uncle's house. He was Feng Kai's main target. Shingu looked at Feng Kai and said in relief, You've really grown up and become more mature. Feng Kai's aunt took out the fruit plate and placed it on the coffee table. Then, she tapped Feng Kai's head with slight force as she said, This kid suffered so much in that woman's hands. How can he not mature? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 126, Bad News. Feng Kai teased, Isn't that so? Didn't they say that you learn from your mistakes? I've already grown so much, so my IQ has increased. As Shingu brewed tea, he lectured Feng Kai. Fortunately, you didn't stay in the countryside for so many years in vain. Compared to 2 years ago, you have less arrogance and hostility. It's fine to be assertive, but being too cocky might not be good for your growth. Shingu specifically said this since the reason Feng Kai couldn't defeat his stepmother in the past was that he was too stubborn and didn't know how to be tactful. Feng Kai recalled how Mr. Feng had scolded him in the past under Lin Lin's instigation, and how he had suffered because he didn't bother to defend himself. He couldn't help but laugh at himself. Feng Kai recalled and changed the topic to business. Uncle, our village is going to open a food factory after the new year. The first batch of products is cherry jam. I want to ask if your factory can prioritize us when purchasing. Ever since Feng Kai's biological mother passed away, Shingu and his wife doted on the two brothers, Feng Yu and Feng Kai. Therefore, as soon as there was a vacancy in the factory, he immediately discussed it with Mr. Feng and spent some money to get Feng Yu a job. It was also because of this that Feng Kai didn't beat around the bush like he did with his other relatives and friends. He went straight to the point and told his uncle about the predicament he was facing. When Shingu heard this, he asked with the same concern as Mr. Feng, You joined the factory? Feng Kai told him about the mission Yu Bing had given him. After Shingu knew that the sales would determine whether or not Feng Kai became an official employee, he immediately said, As long as the quality is passable, the employee rewards of our clothing factory can be decided as jam. But Feng Kai, you have to keep an eye on the quality of the products. Purchasing had always been a lucrative job. To Shingu, purchasing from anyone was the same. Since his nephew had this mission, he would definitely give Feng Kai this chance. The only requirement was that the quality had to be passable. Otherwise, if the employees felt that the quality was too bad and reported it to the higher-ups, he would be in trouble. Feng Kai immediately smiled and promised, Uncle, don't worry. I'll definitely feedback this opinion to the factory. For the first batch, word of mouth is very important. We don't want to ruin our reputation. Shingu hinted again, it's best to be more particular about the quality. If it looks good and tastes good, I can help your factory fight for more opportunities in the future. Feng Kai was overjoyed. Thank you, uncle. I'll definitely do my best. I'll show you our products in advance. Shingu smiled and nodded. On the other side, Feng Yu hesitated for a while before choosing to tell Mr. Feng. He didn't know what other ways Feng Kai had, but he was worried that if the person Feng Kai found didn't agree to help and his brother didn't get a spot in the factory, wouldn't he have to be a farmer for the rest of his life? Therefore, Feng Yu told Mr. Feng about the connection between Feng Kai's transfer and purchase of the machine. Father, my brother said that their cherry trees will bear fruit after the new year. If the factory is willing to pay on credit, he will think of a way to persuade the village to use the fruit trees with the corresponding production value as collateral and pay them off within 2 years. Mr. Feng was silent after hearing this. After a long while, he slowly said, I'm going to the factory director's house. Don't tell your brother yet. Feng Yu revealed a happy expression. They were going back to the village tomorrow, so Feng Kai asked his two buddies out again. Chen Min was a little embarrassed. He didn't help his buddy because his father was unwilling to negotiate with his supervisor. However, because his father was a member of the factory's guild, Chen Min finally persuaded his father to recommend the products of Yi Mountain Brigade's factory on the next procurement proposal for employee benefits. Although the outcome wasn't very satisfactory, Feng Kai was still very grateful for everything Chen Min had done. As the two of them spoke, the other buddy arrived. Feng Kai placed all his hopes on Jiang Tao and stared at him intently. Jiang Tao deliberately kept Feng Kai in suspense. He said with an impassive expression, which news do you want to hear first? When Feng Kai heard this, his expectant expression dimmed. He replied in a gloomy voice, bad news. Jiang Tao said in a low voice, my father went to look for the factory director, but it didn't work out. At this moment, Feng Kai pursed his lips and thanked Jiang Tao. Although he didn't succeed, he had to remember when others helped him. Seeing this, Jiang Tao asked slowly, why didn't you ask about the good news? Feng Kai suppressed his disappointment and asked, what's the good news? Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 127, Thoughts. Jiang Tao smiled. The good news is that your father has already talked to the factory director about this in advance, so my father didn't manage to get it done. Feng Kai stood up straight and asked in disbelief, my father? Jiang Tao raised his eyebrows and nodded. Feng Kai blinked. He knew that his eldest brother must have secretly told his father. After bidding farewell to his two buddies, he strode home. After Feng Kai entered, he saw that only Feng Yu's family and Grandma Feng were in the living room. The others had already returned to their rooms to rest. Feng Kai sat beside Feng Yu and asked softly, brother, you told Dad? Feng Yu stopped repairing his son's toy and looked up. You're just too stubborn. If you had told Dad nicely, how could he not help? Feng Kai lowered his head and said silently, that's because you said so. Feng Yu felt very helpless when he heard this. His brother and father's relationship had been strained since the 5 yuan incident. At first, he didn't understand why his father didn't believe Feng Kai. No matter how mischievous Feng Kai was, he wouldn't stoop so low as to steal. Only after he became a father did he understand that people scolded their children because they had high expectations for them. Instead of saying that his father didn't trust Feng Kai, it was more accurate to say that Feng Kai's mischievous behavior, which Lin Lin had deliberately indulged for a long time, disappointed his father time and time again. The more one loved someone, the higher the expectations one would subconsciously have of the other party. He would also point out the other party's mistakes more sternly. The so-called lost 5 yuan was only the catalyst for the long-term conflict between the two of them. Mr. Feng was afraid that Feng Kai would lose his principles, so he punished him very severely, including sending Feng Kai to the countryside to support the construction. This was the vital reason Lin Lin's plan succeeded. After thinking for a moment, Feng Yu went against his father's wishes and told Feng Kai the truth about the application he had sent home a few years ago. Feng Kai looked at Feng Yu in a daze. He had always thought that his father didn't like him since he had always been beaten up the most since he was young. He knew that he was more mischievous than his elder brother, so it was normal for him to be beaten up more. However, later on, his stepmother, Lin Lin, deliberately set him up a few times and his father ignored his explanation but believed in Lin Lin's words. That was why Feng Kai had this impression. Feng Yu patted Feng Kai's shoulder earnestly. No matter what decision Dad makes for you, he's always doing so for your own good. Of course, I'm not saying that everything he does is right. Feng Kai lowered his eyes and was silent for a long time before replying, I understand, but with that woman, our family's relationship can't be like that of a normal family. Feng Yu raised his eyebrows. Most of the time, we tolerate her. It's not that we're afraid of her, but we don't want to put our father in a dilemma. Besides, we'll eventually establish our own small family. In the end, she's the only one who will stay in this house to accompany our father. I'm already in line for a house near the company. I'm going to move out after the house is built in half a year. I'm not worried about Dad. I don't want to have a head-on conflict with her now. I mainly hope she'll treat Grandma better in the future. Phong Kai understood what Phong Yu meant. He wanted to move out, so if there wasn't a policy that allowed them to return to the city, he might not be able to return to the provincial capital for the rest of his life. In the end, the person who would take care of his grandmother and father would be Lin Lin. Phong Kai didn't agree with Phong Yu's point of view, but he didn't refute it. After all, Lin Lin wasn't a kind person. Phong Kai had reservations about whether she treated their father and grandmother sincerely. However, he was also determined to work hard in the factory. Phong Kai always felt that only by becoming powerful could he suppress the greed of people like Lin Lin. On the morning of the 5th day of the spring festival, Lin Lin handed a bag of food to Phong Kai and said with a smile, "Our family specifically prepared these packages for you to take to the countryside. If there's not enough food in the countryside, send a letter back." Lin Lin was used to maintaining a pretense, but if he really sent a letter home asking for things, it was unknown if he could really get anything or not. Therefore, Phong Kai also smiled and replied, "Our family isn't rich either. I also eat a lot after doing heavy farm work. Although I don't eat well in the countryside, sweet potatoes and wild vegetables can still fill my stomach." Who didn't know how to act? Phong Kai thought that even if he couldn't anger Lin Lin, he could at least annoy her. The only advantage the village had over the city might be the abundance of vegetables. Therefore, it was more convincing for him to use heavy farm work as an excuse when saying that he couldn't get enough to eat. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 128, The Zhou Siblings. As expected, when he heard this, Mr. Feng asked Lin Lin to bring 5 yuan and a food stamp for a pound of meat over. Lin Lin didn't show it on her face, but she resented Phong Kai to the core. Men cared about their egos the most. Moreover, they were sending Phong Kai off now. In front of so many people, Lin Lin couldn't do anything that didn't match her persona. Therefore, she had no choice but to do so. If Phong Kai had suggested it last night, Lin Lin could have thought of a way to make Mr. Feng give up on this idea. Everyone sent Phong Kai out of the door. In the end, Phong Yu rode his bicycle to send Phong Kai to the station. "Here, take it." I was deliberately angering her. Phong Kai handed the money and food stamp back to Phong Yu. Phong Yu didn't take it. "I don't want it. The city is given priority to the village's produce. We can eat meat and don't do heavy work every month in the city. Although you're full in the village, you can't eat much meat. You have to nourish yourself since physical labor is so arduous. If you eat a little meat every month, a pound of meat can last you half a year." Phong Kai didn't refuse anymore. He planned to send some canned food home from time to time after the food factory opened. After Phong Kai returned to the village, he immediately found Yu Bing and Wu Jing, then told them about the guarantee. The machine that Phong Kai had his eyes on was 980 yuan. Through his father, they gave a 90% discount, which made it a total of 882 yuan. They had to offer 735 equivalent cherry trees as collateral. Yu Bing and Wu Jing agreed without hesitation. On the 6th day of the new year, the holiday ended. Yu Bing prepared to take the receipt of the loan and go to AC Bank to look for the teller at the front desk to deposit the money. This was a huge sum of money. For this, she even specifically brought Xiaosheng as her bodyguard and delivered Brother Chang's goods to the county along the way. The two of them quickly arrived at the delivery location. Usually, Yu Bing could see a figure in a tattered hat waiting there from afar, but today, Xiaosheng and Yu Bing looked at each other. Xiaosheng quickly observed his surroundings and realized that there were figures moving behind a few trees. He felt a little uneasy and immediately asked Yu Bing to let him out of the carriage. Xiaosheng planned to wait here alone for Zhou Min to figure out the situation. Yu Bing would go to the bank first. After he figured out the situation, he would meet up with Yu Bing and decide what to do next. Hence, Yu Bing let Xiaosheng out. Xiaosheng got out of the carriage and thanked Bing loudly. "Captain Yu, thank you for giving me a ride." The tractor's engine was a little loud, so Yu Bing replied loudly, "You're welcome. It's along the way. When you're done, look for me at the police station. I'll bring you back to the village." Going to the police station was a lie that Yu Bing had made up. Although they didn't know if the people waiting here were targeting them or not, mentioning the police station was a good way to scare them. The two of them looked like villagers who had gone to the county city for errands. There was nothingiously suspicious about them. With that, Yu Bing changed gears and drove away. The person behind the tree looked at the departing tractor and was a little puzzled. Didn't Xiaosheng send his goods through the tractor? "Brother Wu, Is that female driver a delivery person or not? Should we stop her? Brother Wu rolled his eyes. Why stop her? Don't you know that we have to catch them red-handed with the goods? Don't you see that the woman is going to the police station? If we dare to stop the government's car halfway and there are no goods in the car, we'll have to be sent to the police station. When the other two people hiding behind the tree saw Xiaoxing get out of the car, they also quietly approached Brother Wu and asked him what to do. Brother Wu was also very upset about this. After all, his boss had asked him to stop the delivery of goods this time, but they didn't see the goods. Xiaoxing had come to the county empty-handed. After pondering for a while, he only left one underling to follow him to see if Xiaoxing hid the goods elsewhere. Xiaoxing pretended not to notice that someone was following him and continued to wait calmly. Half an hour later, the Zhou siblings still didn't appear. Xiaoxing suppressed the uneasiness in his heart and walked towards the county. After shaking off the two people behind him, he went to the Zhou family's courtyard. Zhou Min opened the door with red eyes. Xiaoxing immediately asked after entering, "Where's your brother?" Zhou Min lowered her head. "My brother is lying inside. He was captured today." Xiaoxing's pupils dilated as he entered Zhou Kun's room with familiarity. He saw Zhou Kun lying on the bed with a swollen face. Xiaoxing quickly stepped forward. "Zhou Kun, what's going on?" "Brother Xing." Zhou Kun quickly tried to get up, but he grimaced in pain when he tried to. "Lie down and talk," Xiaoxing quickly said and slowly helped Zhou Kun back to the bed. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 129, Dead Raiment by Work. Brother Xing, I was followed today. There were 3 of them. When they realized that I wanted to lose them, they blocked me and forced me to tell them who the delivery person was. I didn't say anything, so they beat me up. I was worried that going to the delivery point would expose Yu Bing, so I came back. I thought that if you didn't see anyone, you would realize that something had happened to me. Xiaoxing frowned and said, "They already know where our delivery point is." The Zhou siblings widened their eyes and looked at Xiaoxing. "Is Sister Yu Bing all right?" They had a good impression of Yu Bing, who followed the principle of doing more and talking less. Although the two parties usually didn't communicate much, Yu Bing always remembered to bring them some cookies from time to time. Even if they refused, she would quietly throw the things into the basket on their backs when they turned around. Xiaoxing shook his head. "When we saw that you guys weren't there, we guessed that something might have happened. I got off there. They probably think that I delivered the goods to you directly, so they guessed that I hid them elsewhere." The siblings breathed a sigh of relief. Xiaoxing asked again, "Do you know who it is?" Zhou Kun expressed that he didn't know. "I only heard them mention the name Brother Wu." Xiaoxing was only familiar with the few leaders beside Brother Chang. Brother Wu wasn't among them. He was clearly a lackey. It seemed that he could only investigate secretly. Xiaoxing glanced at Zhou Kun, who was lying on the ground. "Get up. I'll take you to the hospital for a checkup." Zhou Kun quickly shook his head and grabbed the bedboard under him. He said firmly, "I'm not going. I'll be fine in 2 days." Zhou Min cried anxiously at the side, "Brother, just go. You usually bear with the pain. Now, you can only lie in bed. Isn't this serious enough?" Seeing this, Xiaoxing could only threaten, "I'll pay. After the Lantern Festival, the supply in the city will be restored. If you don't recover by that time, I'll find someone else to deliver the goods for me." Zhou Kun panicked when he heard that. "Then deduct the treatment fee from my salary." Xiaoxing agreed helplessly and helped Zhou Kun up. Zhou Min ran to the small courtyard and pushed out the cart that usually pulled coal and placed a rag on it. When they arrived at the hospital, they realized that Zhou Kun's ribs were fractured. Xiaoxing felt anger. Those people really didn't care about human lives at all and only cared about money. They were so ruthless to a teenager. Fortunately, children of this age were still growing and had strong healing abilities. The doctor only prescribed medicine for 10 days, then treated the injuries on his body. He instructed Zhou Kun to come back for a follow-up examination in 10 days. If he healed well, there was no need to apply any more medicine. After Xiaoxing sent Zhou Kun home, he went to the bank to look for Yu Bing. As they had already agreed on the time to release the money when the procedures were done, the bank prepared the cash on time. Yu Bing received the money smoothly. When Xiaoxing arrived, it was almost 10 o'clock. After the two of them got into the car, Xiaoxing told Yu Bing what had happened. Yu Bing gritted her teeth and cursed, "These bastards." Xiaoxing pointed at the corner in front and said, "No one usually approaches the corner in front. Leave me there. After I send this batch of goods, we'll stop the supply. I'll resume the supply with the city before the Lantern Festival. Drive straight to the police station and wait for me." When Yu Bing arrived, Xiaoxing took the Zhou family's basket and loaded the goods before going to Brother Chang. At this moment, the two people who had lost Xiaoxing had also returned to the black market. They were reporting the situation to Zhang Chao when they saw Xiaoxing coming over with the goods. Xiaoxing had been observing the black market situation. As the clothes of people in this era were similar, Xiaoxing felt that the two people talking to Zhang Chao looked like the people who were following him. In order not to alert the enemy, he quickly glanced at them and memorized their appearances. After the delivery, they left the black market as usual. After walking for a while, as Xiaoxing had expected, someone followed him. This time, Xiaoxing didn't turn around. He deliberately walked into the salon to ask about the price of cutting hair. Through the reflection of the mirror, he saw the stalker's appearance and confirmed that it was Zhang Chao's doing. When the two of them followed Xiaoxing and saw Yu Bing waiting at the police station, they were terrified. The most terrifying thing for people in their line of work was seeing the police. They jogged away in apprehension. When they returned to the village, Yu Bing handed the money to Mr. Wei. Mr. Wei smiled. Good. I finally see some money coming in. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 130, The Hope of the Village. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Jin entered the office. When he saw the money in Wei's hand, his eyes lit up. You're quite fast. Mr. Wei, give me 2,000 yuan and give me the village's account book from last year. I'll go to the Agriculture Bureau now. Mr. Wei's heart skipped a beat. He had yet to spend much time with the money, so why was this wealth distribution boy here? Mr. Wei pursed his lips and took out the ledger first. Then, he gloomily counted out 2,000 yuan and handed it over. Wu Jin immediately reached for it. He tugged at it twice, but it didn't budge. He looked at Mr. Wei helplessly. Mr. Wei looked up at Wu Jin and said with heartache, remember. Spend less if you can. There are still many expenses to pay. Wu Jin said impatiently, I know. Let go quickly. Don't waste my time. Mr. Wei slowly let go and watched Wu Jin walk out the door. Yu Bing pursed her lips and chuckled. Her originally depressed mood improved substantially. Don't worry, Mr. Wei. I'll make sure you have endless money in the future. Mr. Wei felt a little better when he heard this. You have to work hard. This industrial chain is the hope of the entire village. Yu Bing smiled and nodded. This time, Wu Jin entered the Agriculture Bureau proudly with the money. After knocking on the open door, Wu Jin greeted with a smile. Happy New Year, Chief Zhao. As long as the Lantern Festival wasn't over, the New Year wouldn't be over. Chief Zhao looked up and realized that it was Wu Jin. He didn't expect to get the money before the fruit tree bore fruit, so he looked at it suspiciously. Mr. Wu, Happy New Year. Why am I getting goosebumps from your smile? Wu Jin smiled and said, Chief Zhao, you misunderstood me. I'm here to buy trees from you. When Chief Zhao heard this, he felt a little relieved and teased, not bad. You have the money to expand production. What kind of saplings are you planning to buy this time? Wu Jin sat in his chair calmly and slowly replied, 3,000 pear trees and 5,500 persimmon trees each. I want all of them to bear fruit this year. Chief Zhao's eyes lit up when he heard this number. He immediately took out a calculator and started typing. When he saw the number, he looked up at Wu Jin and said, a total of 10,600 yuan. Wu Jin smiled and looked at Chief Zhao. I'll pay 1,000 yuan for this batch of fruits first. I'll borrow money from you for the rest. Chief Zhao's smile froze. He knew that he had let his guard down too early. He was so angry that he put the calculator aside. Go wherever you want. You have the cheek to say that you want to buy trees from me with 1,000 yuan? Wu Jin's expression didn't change as he continued, this 1,000 yuan is not just money. It represents my attitude. Then, he took out the ledger he had specifically brought and flipped to the last page. Chief Zhao, take a look. After distributing the money at the end of last year, this is all that's left. 1,200. I really gave you all the money I could. Wu Jin had a bitter expression on his face as he said helplessly, Chief Zhao, I really have no choice. The village is poor. As the village chief, if I don't think of a way to help everyone survive, won't I have to watch the villagers work on an empty stomach forever? As Wu Jin spoke, he became emotional. He still had lingering fear when he recalled that year's famine. The feeling of watching the villagers die from eating soil since there wasn't any money or food was too unbearable. Chief Zhao was also from the countryside and knew the economic situation of the various villages in the county. When he thought of the situation of the Yi Mountain Brigade, he felt sympathetic. Therefore, he accepted the 1,000 yuan. However, he still had to charge an additional 0.01 yuan for the remaining money. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to explain to his supervisor and other departments. Wu Jin successfully obtained the fruit seedlings and 3 training spots. He left the Agriculture Bureau in satisfaction. The next day, with great reluctance, Mr. Wei forced himself to send 2,000 yuan to go to the pesticide factory and fertilizer factory. However, Wu Jin changed the 1,200 yuan in the account book to give it to whoever wanted it. In the end, he spent a total of 1,300 yuan to negotiate the use of this batch of fruit trees pesticide and fertilizer for half a year. Naturally, he continued to write IOUs for the rest. After the matter was settled, Yu Bing chose a knowledgeable young man and 2 villagers to go to the Agriculture Bureau for training. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.